literally the body and the brain don't know the difference between reality and rehearsal at all. They did this study where if you imagine doing finger exercises or actually do the finger exercises, the fingers get to the same level of strength. It's our beliefs that lead to our stories, and our stories that lead to our thoughts and our feelings. And our thoughts and feelings are what create our reality and create our body's frequency. Your reality comes from your frequency. We are manifesting everything in our reality every millisecond. We just don't realize it. If you just stay 51% of the time in curiosity and above, so optimism, hopefulness, forgiveness, joy, elation, excitement, any of those. If you just stay, if your baseline is just, okay, maybe this can be okay, and really feeling that and meaning that, 51% of the time, your entire world will change for the better.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. We'll start with our quote of the day. Wait for a miracle and it will never come. Take responsibility and you'll invite a miracle. That's by Dr. Laura Berman, who happens to be our guest on the show today. Dr. Laura Berman is one of the world's leading experts in sex, love, and relationships. She earned 2 masters and a PhD degree from NYU, and has spent the last several decades helping individuals and couples around the globe love and be loved better. Dr. Berman's also a best-selling New York Times author of 8 books. That's a lot of work. And she's hosted and starred in several TV shows, including OWN's In the Bedroom with Dr. Laura Berman, The Dr. Laura Berman Show, and Sexual Healing on Showtime. She had a couple life crises that put her on this new path that taught her all about quantum physics. And I know if you've been listening to our show that you are aware of quantum physics because we talk about Esther Hicks all the time, and we talk about the power of manifestation. We had Dr. Joe Dispenza on, who talked about all of this. So hopefully you're not new to this. If you are new to this, you're going to have your mind blown. And even if you're not, your mind is going to be blown because we learned so much today that will help you in your life and in your relationships and in all relationships. So without further ado, here's Dr. Laura Berman. Okay. So I've had this book for, I think, maybe 2.5 years. When did it come out?
Yeah, about 2.5 to 3 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my friend Nola Singer sent it to me. It was right after my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. And she said, you have to read this book. I'm sending it to you. And I remember reading through it and just connecting so quickly to, the thought that, or the idea that we control our reality and that our thoughts control reality and so much of this stuff. So as you talk about what's your AFG?
Can I curse
yes,
on
you
this?
Can curse
Another
here.
fucking growth experience.
Yeah.
AFGEs, I call them, yes.
So we've both had these.
Yeah, a lot of them.
And we both have had one of those unique moments where it's like mother-daughter situation. So you and your mom had breast cancer. You lost your mom, unfortunately. I'm so sorry for that. You lost your mom to breast cancer, and it was like a year later you got breast cancer.
In the same breast as she had it. And nothing before that. I was in my 40s.
And so my mom gets brain cancer. She gets a brain tumor. And then 8 months later, I find out I have a brain tumor on the same side.
Isn't that crazy?
And for us, it's like lightning striking.
Yes.
There's no hereditary connection.
Me either.
So breast cancer I thought was hereditary.
Well, it can be hereditary, and maybe it is. But as far as all the genes they have been able to identify that make it genetic, neither my mother nor I have those.
Okay, so now I have the chills.
Yeah.
So before we get into everything that this book is about, and I love it, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because
Me too.
I feel like when you have another fucking growth, what is it?
Experience, AFGE.
Another fucking growth experience. I keep thinking there's
another fucking one is like the idea.
So I think what I've realized is we go through these things and then we're reaching out for meaning and we're reaching out for another dimension. Like we want to go to another level. If we're lucky,
it's part of our expansion. Like I always say that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, first gives a little scratch at the door.
Yes.
And you don't listen usually, or at least I didn't.
Yep,
Then
me neither.
there's a little tap. Then there's a knock. And if you still don't listen, the whole freaking house is going to get blown down until you listen. And then you're like, oh,
I say
okay.
the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Like God, kept talking to me and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I'll be good for a little bit.
Yeah,
and then I quit. And then the brick comes down, hits you in the head.
Yeah.
And so we have these moments and I feel like I was given this book for a reason. I was given Esther Hicks. I was given Joe Dispenza. I was given all of these people that I know you've connected with as well.
That you never would have found.
Never would have
were it
found.
not for that. Yeah.
And with it unlocks a whole other level of life.
I know. It's amazing.
Which
it's such
is
a
so
gift.
powerful.
And you would have never been open to it were it not for your fucking growth experiences.
Not as open and definitely.
Well, I wasn't. I mean, you're just not putting your attention on it.
Yeah.
You're trying to fix, manage, and control everything instead, like most of us are trying to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I feel like I was on the path slowly and I was trying.
Yeah.
But this definitely accelerated it. So before we go into all of that, when you think about the idea that maybe we shouldn't actually go into it first. Maybe we should explain everything to everybody. This is my selfish. I want to know why you and me and our moms had what we had and how we may have contributed to it. So we're going to hold on that thought. And Stephanie, you're going to remind me to make sure to go back to that question. Because I think there's no coincidences.
No.
And there's got to be a reason why we both got what we got and how this all happened. So first, let's talk about quantum physics, which is so scary and so big.
I know.
And I remember in high school when I had the option senior year to take physics, I'm like, that sounds really hard. No thanks.
I know.
Now I regret
I've never
it.
considered. I mean, I've always been considered a scientist, and I do all sorts of, in graduate school and afterwards, I would run all sorts of complicated statistics. Now it would make my eyes cross. But I remember at the time I wrote this book, my son was a freshman in college and he was studying physics. He's like a total brainiac. And I was trying to discuss this with him. And he said, Mom, you don't understand something until you can explain it. And it was really powerful. And so I studied it and hopefully I explained it in that chapter of Quantum Physics for Dummies, right? Myself included. But it really is the secret behind the secret.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You hear about people writing $1 million check to themselves and so that $1 million, why doesn't it work? Because you aren't engaging with what we now understand as the quantum field. So to help everyone understand it just in a general sense, it's really only been in the past 100 years of science that we're even starting to understand the quantum field, which is basically that, you and I are sitting in this room right now. We perceive ourselves as separate people. I'm sitting on this leather couch that seems solid. You seem solid, but none of us are solid. Nothing is solid. We are just vibrating atoms. Everything is just vibration. And because of our five senses and what we're able to perceive with our five senses, we perceive things as solid and separate, but they're not. And so what happened with my AFGE is my entire life and family was falling apart, and all of my normal strategies of fixing, managing, controlling, therapizing, medicating, whatever, wasn't working. I was invited into this kind of deeper realm, and on this whole wealth of knowledge that I really had never really explored. I mean, I'd read The Secret and, kind of understood the gist of it and whatever. But what we now know is that not only are we all vibrating atoms, but that we have an energetic reach. And so right now, you and I and everyone in this area are in training to each other. So what we do naturally is we're like human tuning forks. So we're all matching frequencies. Our bodies hold a frequency that is constantly changing based on our emotional states and our thoughts in a way that we don't even realize most of the time. It's happening naturally. And most of us, especially me, who I am a recovering codependent, I would just match everyone else in the room. That's why they say bad moods are contagious, or, when you walk in the house, your partner is angry about something before you even see them or whatever else. That's quantum physics at work. And so what I started to play with at first to help my children and eventually to do some experiments on my husband, and then ultimately when my mind was blown to start teaching other couples, is that when you learn how to hold your own frequency, everyone else matches you. And that is the secret to the secret, because you can write yourself a check for $1 million. But if you are not holding the energetic frequency of already having $1 million and what that would be like and feel like with all of your 5 senses, then it doesn't connect.
So explain what someone would do to get that $1 million. All
right. So if we're using the $1 million, then...
And in fact, before you do that, I'm going to turn the air conditioning on because it's going to get really hot in here and we forgot to turn it on. So everyone who's listening, please stand by for one moment as someone runs as fast as they can because the remote control is not near me. And make sure that Dr. Laura and I don't cook in here. And so you're going to hear a weird noise, beep. And now we have air. Thank you very much.
Fancy.
Let's hustle back. And so, so go back to how does someone feel it with their 5 senses? What are the steps for someone?
Okay, so let me just back up for a second. I will show you the steps. But here's what you have to know. Our brains are taking in 40 billion bits of information every millisecond. We are only consciously processing 2,000 of them. And that's because of our 5 senses. That's all we can take in, or we'd be freaking nuts, like crazy, because we'd be seeing and feeling way too much. So what you're doing when you're moving into what I call the quantum love zone, and you can do this with $1 million, you can do this with a job, you can do this with an important conversation, a meeting, your family, and the book is all about in your love life, is you literally, the body and the brain don't know the difference between reality and rehearsal at all. That's why you can learn to play the piano if you're just using your fingers and moving them back and forth on the scales, right? With or without, your body thinks it's actually playing the piano. If you imagine doing finger exercises, they did this study where if you imagine doing finger exercises or actually do the finger exercises, the fingers get to the same level of strength.
Stop it. So I can do sit-ups in my mind and I'll have
evidently
abs?
But see, this is the thing. If you're believing, it's our beliefs that lead to our stories, and our stories that lead to our thoughts and our feelings. And our thoughts and feelings are what create our reality and create our body's frequency. Your reality comes from your frequency. We are manifesting everything in our reality every millisecond. We just don't realize it. And so let's go back to the $1 million. You write yourself a check for $1 million. You put it on the table and say, there, I have $1 million. And then you go and you're paying bills, right? Or you're going, out and you have to buy groceries and you don't have enough money, right? You're feeling all the energy of scarcity, fear, I need this, right? The idea of I need this in and of itself is a scarcity feeling, right? So one of the things I describe in Quantum Love is that scientists have actually been able to quantify the energetic frequency of every emotional state. And so that's how I created the Quantum Love Map. And so you're wanting to stay, if you just stay 51% of the time in curiosity and above. So optimism, hopefulness, forgiveness, joy, elation, excitement, any of those. If you just stay, if your baseline is just, okay, maybe this can be okay, and really feeling that and meaning that, 51% of the time, your entire world will change for the better. So back to the $1 million, what you're doing is you're, writing that check and looking at it. But then you are closing your eyes and you are going into the quantum love zone as much as possible. And here's the thing, whether it's the $1 million you want, the relationship you want, the job you want, it's not about focusing on that thing. It is, how will that make you feel? Right?
So you have to live in that feeling more than not.
And you have to be able to identify it, right? So if I had $1 million and you had $1 million, there might be an overlap that we both wanted, right? There might be an overlap in some of the feelings we would identify. But if you and I both listed the top 5 feelings each of us would feel if there was suddenly $1 million in the bank, there would be some differences. So each of us is very unique in that way. And then the key is moving yourself into that feeling state as much as possible in ways that may have nothing to do with having the $1 million. So let's say that for me, if suddenly $1 million showed up in the bank, I get clear, okay, first I would just feel freaking relieved.
Yeah.
I would feel relieved. I would feel free. I would feel excited. I would feel creative because I'm going to think of all sorts of fun ways and things to develop with it and things to do with it. I would feel generous because I'd share some of it with, that's just off the top of my head. I would probably think about it a little more, but just to give you an example. And then I'm going to look in my life day in, day out for opportunities to feel those feelings, seek them out. So not with money, right? I'm going to go and spend some time at a soup kitchen so I feel generous. I'm going to go through my old clothes and give them away.
Ooh.
I'm going to do something really creative that doesn't cost any money, because I'm worried about money, let's say, right? So I'm going to go do something. I'm going to paint. I'm going to go get some cheap watercolors and paint. I'm going to make a beaded necklace. I'm going to, I'm going to do things that make me feel those. I'm going to do something that makes me feel relief, even if it's not financial relief.
Like put some Neosporin on that cut.
Yeah, right. Or go to a yoga. Yeah, that could help. Or go to a yoga class, right?
Yeah.
Or just take a long bath, right? Or do something that makes you feel relief. Because if you can do that separately from what you're trying to manifest, you are living in the frequency of which you want to create. It's not really the $1 million you want.
It's the feelings.
It's the feelings that the $1 million gives you.
Oh my God, you're right.
Right?
Well, it's the money too. But
right, but why?
The feelings.
Why the money?
Yeah.
Money is just energy.
Well, and
why?
it goes.
Why money? Because of how it makes you feel. Why love? Because of how it makes you feel. Why that man or that woman? Because of how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
Everything is about how we want to feel. That's why we're in these bodies, to have the feelings and experiences that we can't have out of these bodies.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, yeah, it's like even someone wanting to go down Rodeo Drive and buy a Chanel bag. It's not really about the bag. It's about the feeling it's going to give you. It's going to make you feel significant. It's going to make you feel like
admired.
Rich. People are going to compliment you. It's
right.
So
and
pretty.
why rich? Why rich? Because I have this conversation with my 13-year-old all the time who is insanely into name brands. And I'll say, okay, so how is that going to make you feel? And it drives him crazy. I was like, and why? Why will it make you feel that way? But I really try to help him understand that the Gucci, whatever, Pucci, whatever is not going to make it's the story you're telling yourself about those things and what it means to you personally that creates the feelings. And that's what drives everything. So in a general sense, back to the $1 million, you're out there, you're putting yourself in these frequency states basically by creating more and more experiences that create that feeling in you. And you're spending a lot of time in your imagination. So let's switch to love, right? So I do a lot of, quantum love is about manifesting the love life you want, whether you're in a relationship or looking for love. But let's just talk about, looking for love, right? You're not going to think about those qualities you want in a partner. Got to have this salary and this height and this no kids. What you want to think about is the top 5 ways you want to feel. Right. And you move into meditation. So the same thing, the same way, living in those feelings as much as possible. And then your meditation is about moving into open-heartedness. So I can take you through it if you want.
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first thing is to remember.
But before we go off to this topic, because I know someone at home is listening to this and they're thinking about the $1 million thing.
Yeah. Back to the $1 million.
How often? I know, right? It's really about the $1 million. Yeah. How often it feels a little daunting. I can imagine for someone it's daunting to think, well, that's a lot of work. I have to figure out how to do all these new things in my life to get these feelings.
Just do one a week, right? But that's what you're looking for. So what will start to happen is that your attachment, ironically, let's just think about it logistically, because there's the logistical field and the quantum field, right? Just practically, if you're spending 60% of your free time wishing you had $1 million,
stress that you can't
make ends meet, versus 60% of your time where you're not even fixing anything, you're just worrying, doing something that creates positive feelings in you, feelings that you really want and that you're seeking the money for. Not only do you just practically realize that these feelings can come from all sorts of places. I can be broke and still be happy. I can still be in abundance. In this exact moment, I may not know how to pay the rent. I may not know how to buy groceries. But in this moment, I have anything I could need. I have my health. I have my partner sitting here. I have a roof over my head. Maybe it won't be there next week. But right now, I'm going to focus on doing something that makes me feel free. It's an act of faith, obviously, because our natural instinct
is to worry.
And then our natural instinct when we worry is to go to fix, manage, and control. I mean, that was certainly my MO, right? But it doesn't work.
Which creates more stress.
Right, it doesn't work.
More illness in the body.
Absolutely.
But for somebody to surrender like that, which is what you're saying, right? You have to surrender and say, I'm going to be fine no matter what.
That's a lot to ask.
It's a lot to ask because someone's thinking, well, I'm going to lose my house.
Yes.
I'm going to lose my life.
It's very easy for you to say.
I have kids I have to feed. How can I move in this direction? I believe in this. It sounds good.
You start with low stakes.
How do I do it without everyone around me thinking I'm a lazy lame ass that's not worrying about these things? And here I am running off and volunteering and doing all these things. How do you reconcile all of those feelings so that you can do it?
Well, there's so many feelings that we could break down here. One is, as you start doing this, myself included, people will think you're crazy.
Yeah.
The people who are low frequency. And as you raise your frequency, and this I'm sure happened in your life too, it sure as hell happened in mine, people will just start drifting away. Many of them will become angry at you for no reason. That is because their frequency is so much lower than yours, and you've been allowing them to bring you down to their frequency. Now you're not, and they don't know why, but they're furious at you and demonizing you, right? And that's what happens because the only way they can be with you is if they face their own shit, which they're not ready to do. So yes, people may think you're crazy. And you don't have to tell them what you're doing. And you don't have to do all of this at once. You're still going to have to, fix, manage, and control some stuff with your finances in the $1 million situation, right? But can you spend an hour a week, right? Can you spend 15 minutes a day doing this meditation I'm going to show you, which could be applied to $1 million or anything? Can you spend 15 minutes a day in the morning and in the afternoon, like maybe when you first wake up in the morning before the day gets crazy and when you're going to bed at night? Just that. Can you spend an hour a week doing something that puts you into one of those feeling states? Can you start to play with this maybe in a less high stakes situation, right? Where maybe, you're still going to be in fix, manage, and control about your money, but about, something in your work or in your neighborhood or with your kids or with your family, you're practicing this, right? Because here's what starts to happen is that it's freaking magic. And so as soon as you see it happen, you're like, holy okay. And that's what builds faith is the experience, right? Because faith is trusting that which you can't see and can't prove. And so of course it's much easier to have faith as you start to see this in action.
So one of the biggest things I think you said that's like an aha moment is, why wouldn't you want to do these things to acquire the feelings that you want from the $1 million? Right. So if you're running around your life and you're stressed and you're feeling all these negative feelings all the time, and there are people out there who have said, if you swap out those feelings, you'll get everything you want. Why not try? Right. And it's a very simple thing.
Normally we need to have an AFG that is of such huge consequences, then we'll be willing to try.
Exactly. So I've seen it work, and I get it. So let's go through the process because I want to experience this, and then there's so many other things I want to talk about that I'm so excited about. I have
Me too.
So many notes and so many ways because I want to really explain to people the different steps and some of the experiments that were done to explain to them why you can control your destiny, basically.
Yes, it's fascinating. Okay, so let's just take them through the little well, let's all get in the quantum love zone before we do that. So the first thing is remembering that we're energetic beings, right? You want to, as much as possible, ground your energy. And by the way, I have all these meditations on my website and in the everywhere else, so you can have them guided, but you can also just listen back to this podcast. So the first thing you want to do is ground your energy. And when I was first doing this, I had Post-it notes all over my house and my car, ground, because I tend to be someone who's in my head all the time, off somewhere else, rarely in my body. And the way that you start mastering your frequency is by being more and more in your body, right? So you take some deep breaths, and as you breathe in, you're going to imagine a light, any color that you feel at this moment, there's no wrong color, coming in through the top of your head as you breathe in, and as it fills your whole body as you breathe out, it shoots out your tailbone deep, deep, deep into the earth, like making roots of a tree. So just take a couple of deep breaths like that. And for someone like you, Maria, or for me, who does a lot, has a far reach, just like a tree, your roots, you want to be double the width of your branches reach, right? So as we're doing this podcast and you're reaching however many hundreds of thousands or millions of people, however many are listening, billions of people, you are making, and you're manifesting it. You're making your roots as wide as the earth, right? You're making them so wide. And so you're breathing in and then grounding. For someone who's going to drop their kids off at school and, running around doing errands all day, maybe your roots are a little less big than Maria's right now. But just do those roots for a couple of breaths.
So we're just taking light in from the top of our head, having it go all the way down through our feet, and then creating
out.
roots.
Or out your tailbone.
Oh, tailbone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Your tailbone. It could go out your feet, but I like the tailbone. It feels much more grounding. And it's also grounding your root chakra. And then you'll notice sort of as you do a couple of breaths like this, you kind of feel more settled into your body a little bit. And now I want you to go just in your imagination. Let's just make this a general one, whether you want $1 million, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a partner, a job. Go to a place in your mind where you felt pure, unadulterated, unconditional, unbelievable love. Maybe when you held your puppy for the first time, or your baby for the first time, or when you kissed your beloved for the first time, or when you finished that huge race and reached the top of the mountain, whatever it was. Imagine that scene. There's no wrong answer. You can do this differently every time if you want to. And now here's the key. You are not watching yourself in that scene. You are there in first person. So if you are holding that baby, you can see the baby in your mind, in your arms. You're using all of your senses in your imagination. How it would smell, how it would feel, how it would look. And you're there as if it's happening right here, right now. And so just literally be there in your imagination, remembering that your body and brain don't know the difference. And notice what you feel in your chest, what you feel in your back. You'll often feel a little bubbling and spreading in your chest, relaxing in your shoulders. Can you feel that?
Feels good. Feels good.
Right. So you can stay here for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, however long you want.
Unless you're hosting a podcast.
But you're also, that is your body in the quantum love zone. Right? So for you, Maria, what was the feeling? If you could name one feeling, I'm sure there were many.
It was just kind of peaceful.
Peaceful, right?
Yeah.
So
and pure.
Pure. Okay. So peaceful and pure, right? That is something that maybe your heart is wanting more of, right?
Yeah.
So really being in, even in your imagination, and as many scenarios that create more peacefulness and purity, right? If you were imagining holding that $1 million check, what would it feel like? What would it smell like? What would it look like? I'm there right now. It's happening, right? Or maybe you're there on your yacht with your whole family already having the $1 million, right? But you're literally moving your body into the frequency of that which you desire as if it's already here. And that's what manifests our reality.
Yeah, that's the key. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go into some of this.
Okay.
And I want to try to simplify this for people because you and I have been looking into this for so long. And other people are just kind of coming to this.
Yes.
So I believe it was probably page 18 where this kind of started. So, oh no, that was coherence and entrainment, which I'm obsessed with. And we are going to talk about.
It's like a Jedi mind trick. It's crazy.
Oh, okay. So the different principles are what I'm looking for.
Okay, those are in. I can get my copy if you want, but those
I got it.
Okay.
So principle number 1 is that everything is energy. And we kind of talked about that, right? Mm-hmm. So as you say, we're pure potential, and like attracts like.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because if you think about it, atoms are magnetic, right? And we're going to get into this, that we entrain and entangle with each other. The more time you spend with someone, the more entangled your atoms are. And then we're matching each other even more so, where if I took probably your atom, one of your atoms and your partner's atoms, and separated them and started spinning one the opposite direction, the other partners would start spinning the opposite direction at the same millisecond. You're so connected to one another.
And then is that where codependence comes from?
No. Codependence is a scarcity frequency that is a coping mechanism. I'm one too. It's many of us, it means we grew up with abuse, addiction, hypercriticism, and the only way we could stay safe was by merging with that other person. Codependents are almost always extremely good at this because they're so freaking intuitive because they had to be in order to survive.
Yeah. Holy shit, you just described me.
Yeah, me too. I recognize it. You spot it, you got it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're all energy. Is there anything in there that you can clearly explain for people to understand so we can go through the different steps and get them to this?
Well, I mean, I said the bulk of it. This is what you have to understand is that we're not only energy, but our intentions and expectations are what create our reality. So for instance, when quantum physicists do most of their experiments, they leave the area. They do them in vacuums or in separate sections away from them.
So they don't influence.
Because they influence, even if they don't want to influence, they influence the outcome.
Because of their beliefs.
Yes. And they may not even be, this is the crazy, most of us aren't even conscious of our beliefs. This is part of the path to quantum love. That which you want to manifest, you got to get clear on what your beliefs are about that thing you want to manifest, which if it hasn't manifested, probably aren't great. And your belief, and how to change those beliefs, right, is really the process. So quantum physicists just stay out of the way because they don't want to influence. That's how powerful our thoughts and expectations are.
Okay, so quantum physics principle number 2, we're all connected.
Yes, so my energy where I end and you begin is an illusion. They've been actually able to measure, and it's probably much more than this. This is just what our current technology can measure, that our energetic reaches at least 30 feet away from our bodies. So that's why I was saying when we're all in a room together, we are matching each other. Your energy is not relegated to just your physical form because your physical form is an illusion. It actually is like, imagine, have you ever seen those aura photographs? Or like you imagine someone, here's your body.
We're like a hologram.
Well, we are like a hologram, but there's like a reach of energy coming from you, and that is touching everyone and everything else. This is something that goes on way beyond the 5 senses, but that you can start to play with as you're wanting to change your relationships or change how someone shows up for you. I mean, I've done it in business meetings. I've done it in relationships. I do it pretty much anytime I'm going to a situation where I'm not sure of the energy in the room. I put myself into my home frequency, walk into the room, and everybody matches me.
So how do you do that exactly?
Well, so you get in the practice of it by that meditation we just did, right? What I figured out is that in the beginning, when I would do that meditation and I would feel it in the open-heartedness and in the joy, reverence, excitement, name your high frequency feeling. And then I'd immediately go, oh, shoot, what's going to happen with the kids or blah, 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 right? And so I decided to create a biofeedback system for myself. So one of the best ways to do this is to move yourself into home frequency, and then, very easy for us to practice this, go right to a thought that's constricting and feel the difference. And then move back to open-heartedness and back to home frequency and then back to constriction. And your body, now I just don't even have to think. Sometimes I want to think because I want something specific to happen, but most of the time I have gotten so full of faith that I know that the universe has something much better designed for me than I could make up. So I just stay in my, base of optimism, but usually in excitement or hopefulness or reverence or whatever feels right for the situation. And I walk in and I can hold it. Or if I'm in a situation and someone is bringing me down, I notice it. So I can just move into home frequency without thought now because my body knows how to do it from all the little biofeedback I've done with it.
Well, and as we continue in this process right now, you're going to learn how you can change them.
Oh, yeah.
You can send them different energy to switch them over to what you want them to be.
Oh, they just do. It's like a Jedi mind trick. They just do. I mean, I live in a house with I always joke, my soul was determined to surround myself with high maintenance men. I mean, I have my husband, my dad, my 3 sons, all who are so freaking high maintenance. And this has been the best training ground for me because they just all get in line when I'm in my home frequency.
I love it. Okay, so we're going to move to, and I'm going to go back to coherence and entrainment and all of that. Principle number 3, you create your reality. This is so intense.
Yeah, and that's a big version. I mean, that's the secret behind the secret, right? So that's what we're talking about there, is that everything that we think is solid is vibrating atoms, and it's constantly shifting and changing based on our thoughts and feelings. This is back to what quantum physics is discovering, that our expectations of what's going to happen and our feelings about those expectations create the reality. Yeah. Again and again and again. And that doesn't mean, people get really uncomfortable with this. Like, are you saying that I created my cancer and I created, my childhood sexual abuse? On some level, not that it's your fault or that you deserved it, but yes, this is all part of your soul's path, and Lord knows I've been through it all myself. I mean, I always joke, and I'm only halfway joking, that somehow I saw fit to experience just about every kind of trauma so that I could help others in my work. And it really has informed my work. But I absolutely can see the trajectory. One of my favorite people, you got to have her on if you haven't already, is Anita Morjani.
I have. I love her.
She's so delicious.
And best.
She talks about how she had that near-death experience. And she talks about how when she died, she has this beautiful image of the tapestry. Like she could see the entire gorgeous tapestry and her thread running and touching and weaving with every other thread in this gorgeous picture. And so, hopefully we don't have to die to really get a sense of that picture, but that's what these horrible life experience, they're all part of our thread of what drives us and takes us in these different directions. And yeah, you may feel like you're on a detour, but it's always a detour to that which is right that's unfolding.
Yes. So through all of this pain comes good, because you're being pushed to your destiny and you're being pushed to where you're really supposed to be. Because if any of those places were good, if that guy was good to you, let's say, or that job was nice to you, you would have stayed.
You would have stayed, right. And you were too scared to leave. So the universe came and kicked you in the ass until you would.
I've been kicked in the ass a lot.
I know. I hear you. Me too.
And so, but I didn't know if I was just rationalizing sometimes, but I do feel like if any of these places were good, I would have stayed and I would have never found my true potential.
Exactly. And it's hard to know at first without having that faith and that experience of faith until hindsight, right? And, then you look back and are like, oh my gosh, if I hadn't have left there, if he hadn't have cheated on me and destroyed me and I hadn't have left that relationship, then I would have never moved to this city and met that person and had my baby and
appreciated
this new person. Like, I can't even imagine. And, and we always say to ourselves, like, there by the grace of God go I, like, thank God that happened.
Yeah.
But you don't feel that way at the time. Often,
Well, that's what I tell people, even with my brain tumor. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Me too. Cancer.
And it's because I had to change everything. And so to me, it was the greatest gift.
Right.
And, I think people think I'm a weirdo sometimes saying it, but
I don't.
Okay. So you create your reality. Your personal vibrations will dictate the world you create.
Everything.
And this is when it gets cool. So observing the world changes the world.
Yes.
This is part of this. And you talk about how scientists have found that atoms are actually nothing more than 99.9999999% empty space. It's a space filled with potential, with energy, and with information. So scientists have even found that matter exists only when observed atoms take shape when we put our attention on them.
Yes.
I wrote OMG next to that.
I know. It's crazy.
So explain this part, because I used this last night as a test, and so tell us what it is, and then I'm going to tell you about my experiment.
I can't wait to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. So the famous experiment that that people talk about when they talk about quantum physics and the law of attraction is the double slit experiment, right? So energy can be in particles or electrons can be in particles or waves, right? So you imagine particles being little pieces of dust and waves being just waves of energy. And they were shooting electrons through these slits and wanting to see whether they came out of these slits as particles or waves. And there was no rhyme or reason to what was happening. And then they realized that the reason there was no rhyme or reason is because the physicists were in the room, and one was probably thinking, oh, this one's going to be particles, I bet, because, he had his story, and the other one was thinking, oh, I'm expecting waves. So then when they weren't in the room, then when they were in the room, it could still be random. When they were in the room and were determining what, having a thought about it, then it would turn into particles or waves. So there have been multiple replications of the double slit experiment, published, peer-reviewed, all kinds of incarnations and versions of this. But what we now know is that atoms are potential, right? Nothing happens until we put our intention on it. And that's why when you say this is all hologram, that this really is all, like I joke, that it's like a video game, and we're creating it as we go along. But we're actually creating our own reality. And when you start to realize that we're co-creating it, let's just say that. We're not, I don't mean to say we're God,
yes,
but we are co-creating it, embodied with the power of that which creates all.
So when you can create your own world, that you also have to take responsibility for it, which is one of the things I realized last night. So last night I did the experiment because I was rereading everything to refresh myself, and I haven't been sleeping well at all for a while. And I'll wake up multiple times a night and I'll look at the clock and I'll be like, shit, it's only 1. Okay, go back to bed, Maria. Yeah. And then it takes forever to go back to bed. And then you wake up at 3 and you're like, oh, it's only 3, shit.
Yeah.
And so last night I was like, okay, if these atoms are 99.999% nothing, empty space, I'm going to fill them with what I want it to be. I'm going to sleep through the night. And so I started talking to myself and I started envisioning what sleeping through the night was going to feel like.
Yeah, you got it.
And how I was never going to get to see that clock because my eyes were never going to open. And so I was like, I'm going to sleep.
You put yourself into that zone.
I did. And it was the first time in probably a year that I slept from 10:30 to 4:30 in the morning without seeing the clock, without waking up once.
Wow.
And
great.
I celebrated exactly the way I saw it. When I was, envisioning it, I was celebrating. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I felt so good.
Yes. And that's it. The gratitude is a huge part of keeping the process because, I was raised secular Jewish. I mean, we went to the high holidays. I grew up in Southeast Georgia where pennies were thrown at me and kids thought I had horns. And I never really had an opportunity to kind of really create a spiritual practice. I certainly tried many things from Buddhism to Judaism to everything in between. But this is my spiritual practice. And there is nothing, I remember reading Einstein once said, you can only go so far into physics without believing in God because it has changed my faith and my understanding of that higher power so differently than anything in my life could have created.
So cool.
Yeah.
So that was that principle. Let's see. I think we can get into entanglement and entrainment, which I'm really excited about. So tell us about entanglement and entrainment, 2 different things, obviously.
Well, yeah, and related. So when two atoms are entangled, which typically happens like in our love relationships and our family relationships, they are moving in the same frequency, direction, angle, everything. It's like what I was talking about with you and your partner. If I took one of the atoms, those 2 atoms are entangled. So there was this really cool University of Washington study, for instance, where they took couples in a committed love relationship and they took one partner to one side of the building and put them in a brain scan and the other in another part of the building. And when they shined a light into one partner's eyes, the ocular receptor in the brain of the other partner lit up. Now the partner in the brain scan had no sense of light being shown in their eyes, right? Because they're taking in 40 billion bits of information that, most of which they're not aware of. But the ocular receptors in their brain lit up. So our heart rates synchronize, even when we're not sleeping together very often, when we've been sleeping together for a while. So this was one of my biggest revelations, because the way that I learned about quantum love, like I said, was through my own dark night of the soul when I was deep into breast cancer after just still grieving my mother. One kid was suicidal. One kid was like having chronic panic attacks and couldn't go to school. The other kid was getting like serious OCD, all of their anxiety coming out. Nothing was helping. And that's when I sort of happened upon, and started reading. I just had no other, and I had to stop my life because I was in breast cancer treatment. So I had the time, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, universe. And so the first time I started to try it was with my son. And I was astounded by the results. And then I was like, I got to try this with my husband.
What did you try specifically?
Well, so I had gone to this is how I first discovered this, out of desperation. I wasn't one who was big on psychics. I never, I knew that they were real, but I knew that more of them than not weren't real, But someone had highly recommended this woman who's become a dear friend. Her name is Therese Rowley, and she was in Chicago. I was in Chicago. I went to see her about my son who was suicidal, and he was in 9th grade and in school. And I was at her office, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go into his field. And I was like, all right, well, he's in school. And she's like, I'm going to ask him permission, And then she just pops open her eyes and she's like, oh, he's clairsentient, which I had never heard that term before.
Me neither.
It's when we can feel what other people are feeling. I mean, we're all doing this, but where we can consciously feel what other people are feeling. That's clairsentience, right? So sitting here, I could feel into you and tell exactly what you're feeling, regardless of your facial expressions or how you're acting. If I were clairsentient, which I think most of us are if we're tuned in. In his case, as with many children especially, he couldn't tell the difference between what was his feelings and what was someone else's.
Ooh.
So he was picking up all the anxiety, this was just a funny side note. We were members for a while of this country club in the suburbs of Chicago. And it was a beautiful place. I wouldn't go there and hang out. Like we would go there, play something or Easter brunch or something, but we didn't spend a lot of time there. But this kid hated it with a passion, and he would melt down from the time he was little every time he went there. And I never understood it. And then I realized after this that he feels all the feelings that everyone else is in denial about. So he would walk into this country club with all the fancy schmancies and the white picket fences and whatever else was there, and see all these smiling faces and feel the rage, depression, anxiety that was going on in these people's hearts and minds, and express it all. So what she said to me about him was that, he's feeling, he doesn't know they're his. And I was like, oh God, this kid is hard, is not going to believe this, because he had already told me that I was a 40-year-old looking for meaning in self-help books and to stop trying to help him. And so she's like, well, here, go home and just tell him what I've said and give him this grounding hug. And she told me she said, first of all, be very careful of your emotional state before you walk in the room with him. And that was a big aha for me, because I realized that every time I came home from work and opened the door to his room, I was like, oh shit, what am I going to find? Is he going to be breaking down? Is he going to, I would just be anxious.
Yeah.
And he would immediately match my anxiety. Right. So she's like, first of all, get yourself really clean and clear, and then give him a grounding hug, because he can't ground himself yet. So you hug him and send love into your heart, from your heart into his, and then down, ground him the way you and I just did a little while ago. But I was grounding him. And so he came home, and I told him what she had said, and he kind of cocked his head and he said, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I think what you're saying is true. And I was like, oh, well, then let me give you this grounding hug. And this kid who was so angry and so mad and so disconnected, melted. I still give him grounding hugs.
God.
He's 23 now, and I still give him grounding hugs. And then I, of course, just shut up, because God forbid I seem invested in something. He was going to run the other direction. So I just go on my way. And then about a week later, and this is when I knew, okay, this is an area I have to explore. He comes home and he's like, I was at my locker today and I was feeling really good. And then all of a sudden I just felt so depressed and mad, and I didn't know why. And I looked up and there was a girl 2 lockers down from me, and I realized, oh, she must be angry and upset. And I was like, okay, now this is interesting. So I started playing with that with my other kids. And then when it worked on them, I was turned to my husband. I was like, And then I was flabbergasted by what happened with him. And then that's when I started to teach my couples I work with and create a system, which ultimately led to quantum love.
Wow.
Yeah. It really is amazing because with my husband too, who, like I always joke, he's not a lawyer, but he could argue in the Supreme Court. He's so freaking smart. He is so smart, and he has to have the final say, and he often gets it. And I was someone who could manipulate my way around any man. It's one of the reasons I fell in love with him, because I could never manipulate him. But by the end, they'd always be apologizing to me, even when I did something wrong. But
that's a good skill.
I know. It was a very good codependent skill. Not very good for an authentic relationship, though. Yeah. And I knew that, which is why I was so attracted to him, because he doesn't let me get away with anything. But it's a pain in my ass a lot of the time, because he doesn't let me get away with anything.
Yeah.
And so I remember we were like outside our house, and he was upset. We were having some argument. I don't even remember why it started or what it was about. But normally, like most of us do, I would listen to respond. I'm listening to what he's saying, but I'm thinking, I didn't say that. That's not what I meant. Or, whatever. Like, I'm not even really listening. I'm thinking he's already lost me on the first wrong thing he said, right? But instead of doing that this time, I'm still listening like I always would, at least pretend I was. And then I was like, oh, wait. And I remember this whole thing that I'd been learning. I was like, let's see what happens here. Like, let me just move into what I now was calling home frequency and remember. And as soon as I did that, I was able to get out of my ego mind and anger and remember who he was, the man, the love of my life, this being a blip in a large trajectory. Like, a lot of my defenses just, I could feel them disintegrating in the open-heartedness, because I was able to truly see him in that second. But I'm still not saying a word or changing anything. And then we were sitting on this bench outside on the street, and he just kind of or I don't remember where we were. We were on maybe it was a deck, but he sits down next to me and just totally relaxes and lost his train of thought. I'd never seen him lose his train of thought. But it was like he immediately entrained to me. And then I put my head on his shoulder, and everything just, like, neither one of us
You diffused it.
I diffused it.
Because if you had matched him with anger, which is what you always did.
Or just with calm rationale. I wouldn't get angry, but I'd be like, it wouldn't be like defensiveness or just meeting him where he was versus moving into home frequency. Yeah. I would do the same thing. I mean, I talk about this in the book. I had this business meeting that I didn't even really understand why I was going. My agent had set it up. It was like a meet and greet. I didn't care. I was just going, doing what he said. I was in New York. He wanted me to have some meetings. I go in, and this woman comes in. She's some network executive. She's furious. I mean, it was like a wave of it as she walks into the room, and she looks at me and says, you have as much of a chance of having a successful talk show as launching a rocket to the moon. And the first thing that wanted to come out of my mouth is like, who the hell? Like, I didn't say I wanted to talk. Like, what are you talking about? I just came here to have a meet and greet. Like, why are you treating me like I want something? I was just like, got really defensive, but then I caught myself and I remembered, oh, she must be in a lot of pain. And I moved just into that without thought, without even intention. I just moved into open heart, and I'm sitting there listening to her. And then she stops. She says, tell me about you. And from that place, I didn't say, well, I've been the host of blah, blah, blah. I just said, you know what? I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I've been a therapist for over 20 years, and I'm just here to help people love and be loved better. And she just kind of cocked her head and said, I think my husband and I need to come and talk to you.
Wow.
And so it just changes everything when you walk around the world like that.
I know. I had this experience. I've talked about it before, but one fight in particular, Kevin and I were having. This was, 6 months ago, something like that. Maybe even, it was less than a year ago. And we were arguing. And we both went to our offices. And I'm sitting there in my office, like giving him the middle finger. I was so mad, right? And then I was like, okay, Maria, you're better than this. Shift. I call it shifting.
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on shifting.
Yeah. And so I shifted. Instead, I was like, let's play an experiment. Let's see if we can change Kevin's energy. Mm-hmm. And so I sat in my chair in my office and I started envisioning hearts coming from my heart to him. And I was sending him love. So I used the visual.
You literally were.
I was literally sending him like a stream of hearts like you would see on Snapchat.
Yeah, I'm envisioning those.
To him. And the craziest thing happened. Within minutes of me doing this,
he knocks on your door.
He comes into my office. Or no joke, comes into my office, doesn't say a peep, and he gives me a hug.
I know.
This has never we've been together 20 plus years.
I know. It's crazy.
He would have sat in his office and pouted. I love you, honey. Yes. Would have sat in his office until I went to apologize.
And then you'd be resentful and he'd be resentful. Yeah, that, I'm telling you, it is a Jedi mind trick for your relationship. And in a good way. I mean, you use it for good, not evil, but it is because you can't have the effect unless you really are in true open-heartedness. Yeah. You know, you can't be like, let me do this so that I can manipulate you into doing this thing that I want and you don't want, right? It's like using it for good. Yeah. And it really works.
So in relationships, when you're having troubles, so we were going through a patch, and what I started to do is I just started envisioning the relationship I wanted.
Exactly. You were doing it.
Yeah. So I was envisioning like holding hands and lovey-dovey and like
romance.
All the stresses
and
were gone.
And you were using all your five senses and you were moving your body into that frequency.
And it changed.
Yes.
Like instantly.
Instantly. I have hundreds of cases. I mean, I share a lot of them in the book.
Yeah.
So many people, men and women, attesting to this, that when you can literally you were doing the quantum love process, like when you can do that, and you have to sometimes learn, which is why I talk a lot about shifting, you have to learn how to get out of your own way, because we have these very well-worn thought patterns and stories and behaviors. I mean, I was just saying to my husband the other day, because I have changed even a huge amount in the past year, the poor guy, and I was like, listen, you just have to understand that this past year in particular, I've been letting go of so many toxic strategies that I adopted so early in life to survive in my very toxic family system. And it led me to often not be in my body, to just be a pleaser, to say yes to whatever you wanted. And that's who you married. And I get that, but that's not who I am anymore.
Ooh, this is tough.
And it's going to be hard for you, but I think you're really going to like it. He's like, well, how long is it going to take? I was like, forever, but you're really going to like it. And so what? And he has, because as a result of me letting go, because he can feel a manipulator a mile away, you know, and that was my main strategy without even realizing it. Because I never felt in control over my life, and it was keeping me limited in so many ways. So as I let go of that trauma and as I got more and more into my body, it was hard for him in the relationship because the system was changing. But because I stayed in open-heartedness, he has done a fabulous job. I mean, I have to give him credit too, but he has matched me.
For sure. I know. I think that's the hardest thing is as you grow and change, you have to grow and change together.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't. And people, I get questions all the time, you know, when do I know when to throw the towel in and blah, blah, blah. And look, either if you do this practice of quantum love, either things will get so much better in your relationship or they won't, and you will get so much stronger and happier and clearer that it won't be so scary to leave. You know, that you will have the strength and wherewithal and clarity and life to be able to separate, and it won't be hard. Or they'll grow with you. I mean, not that it won't hurt and be painful, but that it won't be like you leaving now, you know? And I have found that almost always to be the case.
So when you think about entanglement and entrainment, right? So like Kevin and I have been together for...
You're entangled.
And entrained.
And entrained.
Yeah.
But the key with you is that, and I found this true with women in general, but in particular with those of us who tend to be a little bit more intuitive and or codependent, is that we are master entrainers. It just requires the conscious practice of holding just like I had to learn with my oldest son, to get very clear on my frequency before I walk into the room with him. you have to be really clean with your own frequency, and you are the frequency holder. And he will always, if he is everyone will entrain to you, but if he is entangled to you within a millisecond, he's entrained to you when you change frequencies.
Yeah, because I feel like as I'm sitting here, I'm like, whoa, I think I've adopted a lot of his stuff.
You have. It's the See, that's what it all comes down to in mastering quantum love. How likely are you to let someone else set the energetic frequency?
Yeah.
And how likely you are to let go of your own and lower yours to match theirs.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like for sure I know that my moods depend on him.
That's codependence.
For sure. Like if he's down, oh, forget it. Because he's such a big force.
But that's just a story.
Yeah.
My husband is the same, and was the same. And that's part of what attracts us, right? But it's not true that his is any bigger than yours.
Yeah, mine's big too.
yours is actually, I have found that the guys with the biggest, blusteriest energy are and this is why you're still with him and why I'm still with it's the biggest, sweetest teddy bear underneath, and is in such they're so sensitive.
Yes.
So sensitive to your energy. So what's happening when you match his is that you're perpetuating it. Now because all he wants is to, unconsciously, he wouldn't say this out loud or even to his own conscious mind, but all he wants is to match yours.
Yeah.
That's why he's attracted to you.
Yeah.
So if you just hold yours.
Because I generally have a higher state.
Always.
And so that makes a lot of sense that he would want to be in mine.
Of course. That's what attracted him in the first place. He doesn't, lots of things attracted him, but on an energetic level, the draw to you was this beautiful light, right? And so if you were to ask him, do you want me to dim my light so I can stay with you depressed? Of course he would say no, right? But you can't necessarily even have that conversation without it becoming defensive. But if you can stay in your frequency and know that whatever's going on with him over there is temporary, it's not about me, or if it is about me, it's really not about me. And you're not going to go around the house skipping and dancing when he's sitting in a corner moping. But if you can inside be holding that frequency.
Yeah, leave, go meditate, go feel good, do something.
Yes.
Yeah, I've noticed if I make those shifts, if I go out and refocus, he comes my way.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. And you will change the whole tone of the house, you do not have to match anybody's frequency but your own.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I want you to explain the crystal water experiment that really explained how those atoms are really controllable.
Yeah.
Because I love giving people the science behind everything.
It's so cool. Yeah, that was Matsuri Emoto, a Japanese scientist who was, he studied water crystals, and he would freeze them and then photograph them. And you can actually, I think I have it on my website, but you can look it up online. It's really fascinating because what he would do is he would take water and he would either put words on it or surround people surrounding the water and have thoughts. So think about something that makes you really, really angry. Now, we're 99.9 whatever percent water, right? So if you think about this. And now think about something that makes you feel tremendous joy. He'd put the word, Adolf Hitler, Mother Teresa on containers of water, all different experiments. And then he would freeze them and photograph the crystals. And it is fascinating and kind of amazing when you look at the water crystals, because when you see the crystals of hate, Hitler, even heavy metal music, anything that's really chaotic or angry or hateful.
Heavy
from words to music to ideas to feelings. The water crystals, when frozen, they look naturally like a beautiful snowflake, right? But they would be crooked and asymmetrical blobs and really not pretty. And then the crystals that were surrounded with love or beauty or feelings of love or elation or joy or Mother Teresa or name whatever that word was, those were beautiful crystals. And it just is amazing because water is very, very, all of it, but it's one of the places you can see is very sensitive to energy and the energy of emotions.
And we're made up of
99.9% water.
So that is the reason why we control our thoughts and our thoughts become our reality.
Yeah.
And so when you wake up and you realize you don't have what you want, or you have some of what you want,
but not all.
but not all of it, what is your first course of action?
Your first course of action is to get really clear. Stop focusing on what you want. Focus on what you want to feel. Okay. So if you can constantly be in touch with yourself about that, and, maybe once a month, check in with yourself. 5 feelings that I really want to cultivate this month. It's not about having that thing or that money or that job or that car or that partner. It is about always how you want to feel. And being in that feeling state in your mind and in your imagination, seeking out opportunities. I say this to people who are dating. If you want to think about how you want to feel in love, passionate, maybe, or playful, or safe, or generous, or whatever it is. Go and be that in your community beyond that which you want. Go and seek out opportunities to feel that way. Feel that way in your imagination as much as possible. And you will start to see that people will start showing up in your life who match your frequency and who are going to show you other opportunities to be in that frequency and introduce you to other people to be in that frequency. And it's just like a snowball effect.
I love it. So when you think about the fact that you can create your own reality, when you think about the fact that you can create your own reality, did we somehow create our reality with our illnesses?
Yeah, I think we did. I think I did.
I asked for it, to be honest. I was like, I had a moment with my mom. I was so frustrated because she was rebelling and not working with me. I'm like, I'm trying to keep you alive, Mom. Yeah. And I remember saying, God, I wish you gave me this. I would have been able to handle it so much better. And she's not understanding. And boom, hi.
Yeah, I remember, and I had this, we were mentioning Anita Morjani earlier in this conversation, but I was having lunch with her recently. And I thought, because I feel I've never said it out loud, and she did. And then I was like, me too. She said, I have to admit that when I got that cancer diagnosis, I was relieved because I could finally rest. And I would have never asked for the cancer diagnosis at all, ever. Would never want that, but there was a part of me that did, because it was the only way. I had been told by so many healers and so many, you have to stop. You have to land your plane, Laura. You have to stop. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do a little more yoga. I'm going to take a day off, la, la, la. No, I needed to stop. And it changed my life. It changed the trajectory of my career. It changed my life. It changed my relationships, like all 150% for the better.
Yeah. I talk about it all the time. I feel like, especially as women, because we're everything to everyone and usually nothing to ourselves, we've become human doings, not human beings. I feel like a lot of us are waiting for that call.
Yeah.
To have the excuse to tell our partners that we matter.
Why do we do that to ourselves? Yeah. And it's all of us. I've yet to meet a woman with breast cancer or who survived breast cancer who does not over-nurture the world and under-nurture herself.
Yeah.
And, we don't need to get sick or have a life tragedy. We can just accept the little scratch at the door. This is the scratch at the door, this conversation. Yeah. Accept the invitation.
I've done so many speaking engagements where I've said this. I'm like, why are you waiting for that call to be able to tell your partner that you matter enough to go to yoga a couple times a week, that you matter enough to take a mental health day and get yourself in a right place, and your kids and everyone are going to be better for it.
Absolutely.
Why are we waiting for something tragic to think that we're important enough to take care of ourselves?
It's ridiculous.
And so that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I wasn't relieved. I just didn't care. I was so tired. I was like, oh God, is this my get out of jail free card?
Yeah.
And that's when this kinesiologist I was working with I said to him, I'm just dying to be me.
You said Anita's book.
And he goes, have you read the book? I go, no, what book? And then I read it and I was like so connected to that message.
Chills myself.
Because I was tired. And so now I wonder, when you think about your life before and now you think of your life after.
Yeah.
How did you reconcile the new feelings, the new adjustments? Like, I've had moments of like such loneliness because I feel like I know something most people don't.
Yeah.
Like, you know it. And I have different guests on my show that have it. but everyone goes off into their worlds and everyone lives far away. But like in my inner circle,
you need to change I've changed my inner circle.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't thrown out those people who are, but like I literally have gotten to the point in my life where I don't have it saps my energy to be with people who only with good intentions. They're not evil people, are energy vampires. Like,
oh my God, we talk about energy vampires all the time.
Yeah.
I'll teach you my code for it later.
Good. But like, and it's not that some energy vampires are really nasty. These are beautiful people, but they just are unwilling to bring their frequency up. So what I have found in my life is as I set the intention, I don't want to reject the people that I love, but I need a circle. Yeah. And we need a circle.
That helps reinforce you and keep you in that.
And where you can be like, I'm not fucking crazy, right? Like, I'm not crazy, right? You know, like you have to
and
make
you
sure.
help each other.
And you help each other and you encourage each other and you remind each other and you cheer each other on.
Yeah.
Just like any other friend. But as I set that intention and got really like, boom. I mean, I was scared to death to move back to Los Angeles from Chicago, where I had a beautiful tribe and it'd taken me a long time to find them. And I was so scared, because I lived here 15 years ago and didn't meet one tribe member.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I just got really clear on my intention. I cleared it out. I mean, I cannot tell you the amazing souls that I have been meeting and the experiences that I'm having. And it's been like ecstasy. So your ecstasy is really wherever you are. You just have to create the intention and match it with the energetic frequency, and there it is.
I ask, like at night, I'm always like, continue to flow abundance into my life financially. I'm like, good people, good opportunities. And so I say that, and it's funny, every time someone good comes into my life, I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yes, that's the key. Gratitude is a huge part of it. Acknowledging that and listening to it and acknowledging it and calling on it.
How did you adjust work-wise and schedule-wise? Because that's where I'm in now, right? Like there's a whole new definition for success that I'm trying to create for myself.
Me too.
Because I used to be this type A, do it all, crush, I can do everything. Right. And now I'm like, I don't want to do everything.
Don't want to, yeah.
But then at the same time, am I being lame / a loser for not having all these ambitions, even though I still have ambitions, but everything's on a slower
what you
track.
Want to create. What's the ambition for, right? How do you want to feel? I just had this conversation with my dad, who, like a lot of people, his idea of success is having a certain amount of money in the bank. And he said to me, so isn't it interesting that several of your college friends are all multimillionaires now? And I was like, yeah, it is, because they got that through a really horrific divorce and married to, I was like, that's not my definition of success. And he looked at me like totally shocked. Well, what is your definition of success? And I told him that, of course, being able to pay the bills. For me personally, I love being able to take vacations and send my kids to good schools and pay for their education and live in a comfortable home. But it's not about that. For me, it's about living in peace and connection. It's about being able to do my work in the world in a way that feels authentic and attuned to my heart, not selling out to someone else's agenda, and really being in flow and enjoy in my day-to-day life and sharing that with the world in whatever ways feel good to me, and being in love, that is success to me. If I have the freedom and enough money and enough space and, to do that, I am through the moon. So I think part of it is really getting clear on what success is. I joke that pre-cancer was my 2D self, and I was very much the way you described.
Yeah.
And post-cancer, I've really stepped into my 3D self. And it meant saying no to a lot of projects that would make me a lot of money, but were extremely cheesy or really...
Or didn't have your integrity level. Yeah, I've said no to so many things that right now would help my bank account so much.
Yes, but it's once again back to the faith. And what do you want the bank account for? If you can pay the bills and pay the mortgage and... why? That's why all the surveys, you'll see, not that money is a bad thing. I think money is an amazing thing, but it's an energy, and it's how we use it and what we're actually going after when we're going after it. And we're not going after the money. We're going after how we think we're going to feel when we have that money.
Yeah.
And more often than not, we don't even feel that way when we have the money.
Yeah. It was funny. I was talking about this a lot the last week, ironically, and I saw a post from Natasha Bedingfield. Are you familiar with Natasha?
I am.
And she said, our own personal definition of success has more to do with how successful we are than anything. It's essential to work out what our own values are and line up goals with them, because if you're only trying to achieve someone else's version of the dream,
Which most of us are.
even if it comes true, you might not feel so successful. You could be a kind person who's a great friend, mother, or lover, but still not feel enough. You could gain the world's attention, but still feel inadequate.
Yeah.
You could make lots of money, but not have real friends. And so,
And we both know millions of people in this town like
yeah. And I think that it's so easy for us, looking at Instagram or looking at other people's lives, to think that they have it all. And behind closed doors, they really don't. Everyone's always missing something.
Everyone. And
right?
it's not, and that's the joke, is that none of us are missing anything. We all just think we are.
Yeah.
It's all a story that we're telling ourselves based on some story we adopted that often goes generations back. And it's time to change those stories. It's time to get really, really clear on
what makes you happy.
What makes you happy. And believe me, there is nothing more gorgeous, desirable, aspirational than someone. I mean, you can't miss them when they feel that way about themselves. When they're really in flow, they're like a freaking magnet.
I know. I was on a red carpet this weekend for the Chrysalis Ball. I realized I hadn't been on a red carpet in a while. And I started getting interviewed, and people are like, so what do you have coming up?
Yeah.
And that question kind of irks me now, because I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm working on stuff.
You just say joy.
Yeah, I'm working on
joy
stuff,
coming
but
up.
I don't feel like I need to list them off to you like I would have years ago. And it's funny, like people think the projects you have are what makes you powerful. I'm like, I feel like I've gained a power that is so like undercurrent, quiet, that makes me more powerful now.
100 times more. And it's what you really wanted, which is why you got sick.
Yeah.
Like if you can let go of the story of what you're supposed to want, or what some rando who's like on a red carpet, or what the world who is in a low that vein of the world that is in a lower frequency is, what they're doing is asking you to translate your frequency into theirs.
Yes.
And you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can say, what do I have going on? Boy, so many things, but mostly it's joy and peace. Are you experiencing enough joy and peace in your life right now? And you feel that joy and peace as you're saying it, looking in that interviewer's eyes, you will be shocked at what happens next.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like I said, it's like a power you can't see. But
everybody can feel.
And the truth is, I can't remember anything in that moment. When they ask me, I'm so blinded.
Yeah.
I have really cool things going on behind the scenes, but nothing that I want.
That's a little growth edge for you. There's a part of you that even though you intellectually and a huge part of you emotionally knows that this is exactly where you're supposed to be, there is still that little part of you that gets triggered when you're in the face of the machine, and that's just something to work with. Yeah. That's something to like do that biofeedback I talked about, where you move into that open-hearted and then you imagine that scenario and you feel yourself constrict, and then you move into open. And then the next time you're in that scenario, you'll just be like, boom, open.
I know. I started laughing. I go, if I don't say anything important enough, does that mean I'm not important enough to you?
That was a good one.
The reporter just looked at me and I was like...
That's a perfect response.
Yeah, it's so funny. We ask everybody in closing a question that's pertinent to the title of the show, but what are you doing every day to get better?
For me, I'm ashamed to say this because it's only been, I would say in the past 6 months, I've always meditated. Since for decades, I've meditated. Transcendental, guided, the works, yoga, all that. I've just recently started to pray. And it's not praying like, bless this person or give me this. It's like being in the energy of the universe, like being in that gratitude and connecting with the deep, abundant gratitude I feel for the opportunity to co-create this life I'm living.
So a lot of people don't know how to pray.
I didn't either.
Can you share? Are you embarrassed to share?
I'm not embarrassed about anything.
I've shared mine before, but...
Well, I'll share mine. First, I ground, like I showed you. Then I focus on the diamond chakra, which is the chakra that connects us to our essential self. So if you just tune in, you can even do this before you do the open-hearted meditation. If you just put all of your conscious awareness on this teeny tiny pinprick of light, which is the bottom point of that diamond, about a foot above your head.
What is your conscious awareness specifically?
I'm like imagining this pinprick of light above my head. If you just do this right now, my ears pop every time I do it because I feel myself lifting up. Can you feel it?
Huh.
My ears just popped, just putting my attention on it.
Okay.
But you almost feel like a sucking up or a pulling, like very, very gentle.
Yeah, I get
But it's
that.
like a plugging in, right? So I feel myself plugging in. And that's how I always, like that's my beginning to everything. Ground and plug in. So if I have a question, if I have a prayer, if I have a meditate, that's always what I do first. And then what I've been doing lately is really, because for me, humility, I would say I've always been a humble person, but when I get into my teaching or hosting kind of energy, I forget that it's all coming through me, not from me. And I'm really trying to connect with that more because anytime it comes through me, that's the juice. Anytime it comes from me, it's fine, but it's not the same. It's not the same for me and it's not the same.
It's a knowledge base rather than like a passion, pure,
it's
connected
not,
place.
Right. It's not about the purity and the magic. It's more about my head, which is fine. There's a lot in my head.
Yeah.
But I like the stuff that comes from me. I mean, through me, not from me. So it's really for me lately been about like really forging a deep, almost, I don't want to say childlike in an infantilized way, but child of God-like kind of appreciation and connection. Like, oh, there you are. I can feel you. I can sense you. I sense the massiveness, like a giant cloud of light. And I'm just like one strand. So are you. Like we're all these little strands of that light, but that's the big light. And so I imagine that light, that spark of light inside my heart center, teeny tiny. And as I'm breathing, it gets bigger and more intense. Each time I breathe out, it gets more intense. Each time I breathe in, it gets bigger till it's filling my whole body with God's light. And then I move into feeling a lack of separation between my body and the light of God, whatever you want to call it. I'm calling it, God for the purposes of this conversation. And then I become part of that. And I have all sorts of visions. Sometimes I'm like I'm this little pearl of light in this giant bin of pearls, like a giant ball plays thing, but it's all these beautiful pearls of light. And that's God, all of us together. Sometimes God is just this massive light, but it's me in communication and appreciation and humility, not like I was taught in the prayers growing up, but humility, like holy freaking yet, like I can feel myself embodied and empowered by the power of God. And that's what I've really been focused on.
I love it. That's so great. I'm going to try that. If you want to learn more about Dr. Berman's services, resources, as well as purchase any of her books, including Quantum Love, which of course is what we talked about today, and I love, visit her website at drlauraberman.com. In the meanwhile, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.